After seeing the Mac Studio at the Apple Creative event in London, I knew I had to test it. And now, after a full week of pushing this thing to its limits in creative work, let's see if it's actually worth it. I switched from Windows laptops to a MacBook Pro M2 Max only 2 years ago. I was using Windows for 10 years, but the Apple M chips really convinced me of how good they are for my purpose of video editing. And now, after using the M2 Max, M3 Max, and even M4 Max MacBook Pro right now, it's my first time using a Mac Studio. I remember my Windows times with a big PC with a jet engine inside, at least it sounded like that. So I'm excited to see where the Mac Studio is different. Apple sent me this Mac Studio M3 Ultra for the next few months so I can test it in detail. First, let's take a look at the exterior of the Mac Studio. Luckily, Apple remembered that we creatives still have to use SD cards, so there's a memory card slot in the front as well as 2 Thunderbolt 5 ports, especially if you use the M3 Ultra, because if you go for the M4 Max option, you will only have 2 USB-C ports in the front. But the backside is the same on all the models. You'll find 4 Thunderbolt 5 ports, 2 USB-A ports, power plug, a headphone jack, and HDMI 2.1. Overall, this thing is really small, but don't let the size fool you. Inside, a 32-core CPU, 80-core GPU, 256 GB of RAM, and 4 TB SSD. Or in other words, a tiny supercomputer that could probably beat my past 4 Windows laptops from years ago combined easily. Okay, enough specs, let's throw it into an actual creative workflow. And I did lots of video editing the past few days. I use different footage, H.264, H.265, also ProRes, and all of that combined is actually what the Mac Studio loves to eat. All the 4 media engines within this M3 Ultra are made for encoding and decoding this kind of footage. So the video playback is super smooth. But if I do more effects in After Effects or use effects like Real Smart Motion Blur in Premiere Pro, which is a really power consuming effect in Premiere Pro, it starts to drop some frames, but that's completely normal. On other laptops, I can't even play it back, but here I can do it. So I can work on any of my video editing projects without any proxies, no matter H.265, ProRes, 4K, 6K. I didn't use 8K because that's not what I use in my daily workflow, so I can't talk about that, but 4K, 6K easily. The Mac Studio ate that. I also did an encoding and rendering test compared to my MacBook Pro M4, which has the 40-core GPU, 16-core CPU, 128 GB of RAM, and 8 TB SSD. I really need that. And here's the result. The M4 Max took 20 minutes to render my Galapagos cinematic YouTube video. It's a big video project. I used lots of effects. I put in After Effects. I used Real Smart Motion Blur, lots of color grading layers and masking and stuff. I was able to play back the video project at most times, which is insane. And rendering 20 minutes is really good. Now the M3 Ultra, same with that. On some parts the playback was even smoother, but when editing, to be honest, I didn't feel a big difference between both devices. Of course, if there are lots of effects, the M3 Ultra was a bit smoother, but for rendering, the M3 Ultra needed 17 minutes, so it was around 3 minutes faster than the M4 Max MacBook Pro, which can sum up, especially I'm going to render a lot of online course lessons, YouTube videos, Instagram Reels at the same time sometimes, or in a media encoder queue, so this difference can make a big impact in those cases. When it comes to editing, you also need music, sound effects, voiceovers, footage, and all of that I get from Artlist. And now say goodbye to endless searching of these assets, because Artlist just released 4 new features that will change the way you find and organize assets. Let's break it down. First, find the perfect clip faster. Now you can filter by duration and orientation, which is great for Instagram and TikTok as well. And when you found a cool clip, the second feature comes into play. Discover related clips instantly. to match your project's vibe. What's new as well is organize like a pro by dragging music and sound effects into favorites and artboards for a smoother workflow. It's never been that easy. Now the last feature, you know, Artlist has AI voiceovers, and there are different previews which contain music, sound effect, footage. And did you ever wonder, what song was that? Where's that footage from? What's that sound effect? Now you can find every asset that is used in this voiceover preview with just one click. Artlist is making our lives easier, and I even have a special deal for you where you can get 1 month for free. Just check the link in the description and get the assets that you need for your next video projects. So another thing I noted, which was really crazy, is that when I started rendering on the M4 Max, after some minutes, I started to hear the fan. Really quiet, and that's absolutely normal. I mean, a Windows laptop would be a jet engine at this point, but not the MacBook. But the M3 Ultra, at no point I heard any noise. You can just feel sometimes warm air coming from the back, but that's it. On such a small cube, I was really impressed. Now AI is another really interesting point for us creatives. Where it comes to performance is the image generation, the video generation. I downloaded the app. I can't read my writing. Fusion Bee it was. Yes, it was the Fusion Bee, and I generated some images. First on the M4 Max, I entered a prompt and generated a portrait image, which took 11.9 seconds. And the big difference on the M3 Ultra was it just took 7.7 seconds, which is a good difference. This could have to do with the RAM, and the multi-core performance on the M3 Ultra is way better than on the M4 Max, while the single-core performance is better on the M4 Max. So where is the difference? Applications like Photoshop, for example, don't utilize multiple cores. They just use single cores. That's where the M4 Max actually has an advantage in Photoshop. So if you export an image in Photoshop, do incredible high-end work in Photoshop, you might notice that the M4 Max is better than the M3 Ultra. While when it comes to video editing and AI and large language models, which we're going to talk in a second, the M3 Ultra shines with its multi-core performance. Now still talking about AI, let's get to large language models, LLMs. What's that? So those models allow you to run AI prompts on your local device, not through ChatGPT on the web, but just without any internet connection on your local device. The big advantage is that, especially if you work in a company or a freelancer who works with NDAs, you're often limited to use ChatGPT just because of data privacy and stuff. So the option you have is to use a local large language model. You can also use it if you don't have any internet connection, if your ChatGPT is limited, if you want faster response times, and that's where Apple Silicon comes in as well, especially the M3 Ultra. LLMs have a different amount of parameters. For example, the lowest ones have 1 billion parameters, and they use lower VRAM. If you want more accurate answers and better answers, you have to go to an LLM which has multiple billion parameters. There are models that go up to 671 billion parameters, but what I used was with around 14 billion, which is a lot as well. And it was mostly the limit, which can be used on my MacBook Pro M4 Max with 128 gigabytes normal RAM. And on Mac, it's a bit different. They use unified memory, so you can actually use your normal RAM as a video RAM. So to measure the speed of how fast your AI is responding, we use tokens per second. And you can see a huge difference between the M4 Max and the M3 Ultra. And the main reason is, first of all, the higher VRAM, but also the multi-core GPU performance. And that's where the M3 Ultra shines, with up to 512 GB of RAM, which can be used as VRAM. Now the NVIDIA RTX 4090, which is an insane model, for example, has 24 GB of VRAM max. Overall, you would have to use multiple RTX 4090 cards to get the same VRAM for AI as on an M3 Ultra Max Studio. The huge difference also is in power consumption. So this is a whole new level of opportunities, as before companies and maybe even yourself have had to use big server racks and an incredible amount of power to achieve the same AI performance which you can now achieve with an Mac Studio M3 Ultra. For me, it was insane to see the speed. The only disadvantage is you don't have internet access with your AI. You can't put in images. Usually there are workarounds. But with the LLM Studio app that I'm currently using, you can mainly input PDFs and stuff like that, but only with a file size of up to 30 megabytes. Still, it's a great option. You have no limits. You also don't have internet access, but you have fast response times. You don't have internet. So for my Pakistan and Socotra trip in the next weeks, I will be able to use AI anywhere in the world. I won't take the Mac Studio. I will take the MacBook Pro, of course. The big question, what's better for you? The Mac Studio with the M3 Ultra, the M4 Max, or a MacBook Pro with an M4 Max? So first of all, I will use both of them because here in my creative studio, I will have the Mac Studio available every day for high-end rendering tasks, high-end video editing. But on my travels, I will take my MacBook Pro, and I'm super happy with the M4 Max MacBook Pro. But if you have to decide and you're creative, go with the MacBook, because then you can work from anywhere in the world and you have lots of power. Really, like, I'm sure the video editing formats of this thing will be enough for all of my next travels, and even when I'm just sitting on a couch editing videos. But if you're someone who mainly works from home and edit videos or do high-end creative work every single day, then the Mac Studio would be an amazing option for you. If you're going somewhere, you could still bring the Mac Studio a couple of times because it's not that heavy and it's not that complicated to take it with you, and it's small. You could just take it actually. And I could imagine bringing this thing on some film sets or stuff and use a 7-inch external monitor or just an iPad as a monitor. That would be insane. That would be actually insane. You could transfer the footage so fast, have a look, color graded just for test purpose. I will keep that in mind. But now compare the M3 Ultra to the M4 Max. The important thing is, if you are editing videos, you can feel the increased multi-core performance of the M3 Ultra and the better performance in AI, text generation, image generation. Hands down, this is the best Mac I've ever used, the best video editing experience I've ever had. So I can fully recommend the Mac Studio as well as the MacBook Pro, which is my daily workhorse on travel. I'm super excited to hear your stories, your opinions in the comments. If you want to see more of my upcoming Pakistan and Socotra trip or videos like this, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Happy editing.